looks like we may have lost connection there a little bit. Sorry about that. I honestly have no idea why that happened. These technical difficulties, I'm going to have to look into a lot more of these settings because my internet speed is definitely good enough to do the live streaming. So hopefully this actually merges the two channels, and I think it looks like it will because it looks like I'm able to pick up from where I left off. Yeah. Okay, so sorry about that, guys. I was talking about the speed of Python. Django channels speeds things up. I don't know if this part happened or not, but Instagram and Pinterest both use Django in their development, so they handled massive amount of users. So Python is definitely not slow for web development. You absolutely can use Python and Django for web development. So I wouldn't say that statement is true at all. The other part of it is how do you make it faster? Well, one of those things is using asynchronous code, which Python has with async.io, and then also allowing for WebSockets, which Django has, the Django Web Framework has, which is written in Python, with a new project called Django Channels. Hopefully you either got that earlier part of the question or this later part. Okay, cool. So let's see. Next one. You've read somewhere, demount it. Dumont it. Do you have any experience with MapD? I do not. Sorry about that. Thanks for the question, though. Rahul, hello. Much love from Mumbai. Hello, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. I have not been to Mumbai, but I've heard great things. Eknos, Technology Solutions. If we need to build a stack along with Django, where would we like to use something else for managing network requests, keeping Django as the main engine? What framework or platform we should use? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Eknos, so please rephrase that. Thank you. Ganesh asks, can we expect SPA anytime soon? A single page application? Yeah, we have some. So try Angular version 4. That's already on our channel, so you can absolutely learn from that to build a single page application. And next one, Simone asked, does S3 work with Heroku? So if you're using S3 as a static file, yes, absolutely, you can use it with Heroku. I mean, Heroku is made to help you launch your projects faster, so you would just have to put your projects in with something else. Like you'd have to set it up, your projects to set it up to actually do that. And Rahul, the last question that I got from you asks, have I started with machine learning? Yes, I'm doing a lot more research in machine learning to help you guys learn some of those things as well. For whatever reason, my live stream is just really having some issues today. So I'm really going to have to cut this thing short. Sorry so much about that, guys. Tomorrow I will do another one tomorrow, and I'm going to schedule that event right now because of the problems that happened with this live stream today multiple times. It's an unfortunate thing with some technology. Sometimes we have technical difficulties. So tomorrow we will do another live stream, probably around this time, maybe even a little bit earlier. Actually, I'll say it now. It's going to be 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when we'll actually go about scheduling it and making it happen. For those of you who came and asked some questions, thank you so much. For whatever reason, I still can't see the live chat. I'm going to pop it out and look and see. It's back on. Cool. The live chat's back, so I can actually get your questions. Cool. So for some reason, also the live stream it's saying from YouTube that there's bad settings, so there's a chance that we might cut out again. But I'll still be doing it tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll schedule that right after we actually finish up here. Okay. So Abdullah asked, "Hey Justin, how to connect AWS or Django with AWS IoT?" AWS probably has Bodo 3 connecting with IoT devices. So they probably have a lot of documentation on that. So you're just going to want to learn how to use Python to make those requests to AWS IoT. Eknos, if we want to build a stack I actually think I addressed this a little bit ago. So please rephrase that question. Eknos, thank you for the questions, guys. I'm really appreciating it. And thanks for the understanding of the, for whatever the streaming issues are. I have no idea. That my settings aren't any different than before, other than I just didn't schedule this one. That's literally the only difference. I'm not sure why things are not working great. And I have a hard line in too. It's not a Wi-Fi connection. So I honestly don't know why this is going on. So thanks for bearing with me. Much appreciated. Sanu, hi sir, I follow your Django tutorials. Can you please tell me about the difference between Django 1.9 and Django 2.0? There's only minor differences, and actually I talk about Django 2.0, the differences in them, on my blog. So joincfe.com/blog. You can go there and take a look at the Django 2.0. You might have to do a search for it, but the Django 2.0 differences are the new things in it. Thanks for the question. Ari Barbarian, right? Ari Barbarian? Yeah, I think that's how you... Hello, are you covering questions about general coding or a specific topic? Any questions? Questions about coding is typically what I get. But I could, if you want to ask specific topic questions, feel free. Evolution 18, looking forward. Hello. Looking forward as well. Amir Anwar, is MoboX better the choice than Redux nowadays? If not, when should I use it or not? MobX, not MoboX. MobX I haven't used, so I don't have an answer there. Sorry. Let's see. Ankit asks, how would I build a click tracking feature? For example, I send a link in an email. How do I know who clicked it? Oh, right. So I do a URL shortening project. I think it's called, I think it was Django 1.10. I don't remember. But basically, this URL shortening idea shows you how to do the click tracking. It's really simple. You would essentially you can have a couple ways on how to do it. Number one, you can have a custom link that redirects them somewhere else. So that's what you use in an email. And then in that redirect process, you save what link they clicked and when they did it. Right, so in the actual view for that redirect, that's where you do it. Another way is to build custom middleware that takes a GET request, any sort of GET request, and it parses it and looks for a specific URL parameter, such as something from your email, right? And then you'd be able to track it from that URL parameter as well. Joffrey, you didn't get to the answer to the question on hot reload. You just cut off. That is super annoying. Oh, man. Something with this streaming. I got to look into more settings and improving this somehow, because I shouldn't be getting cut off. That's kind of the purpose, right? We want to do this thing. I mean, it's annoying in the sense that it's not giving you guys what you need, but it's also really cool that we can do this. So I have to acknowledge that, of course. It's great that we can even live stream and I can answer your questions from anywhere in the world. That is pretty cool. So the hot reload question, I think it was referring to, like, will the page hot reload if you use Angular and you do a request to the backend? Now, Angular and React use asynchronous loading, so they use Ajax to actually make the request to the backend, so the page doesn't have to reload. That's something that's really, really cool about it, and that's one of the benefits to using one of these front-end frameworks. Hopefully that answers your question. Evolution 18, just want to know Firebase or MongoDB, like which to choose. I would say Firebase is more secure, so I would use Firebase. I've heard security issues with MongoDB, especially as it relates to Django, but just in general, if there's any security things that come up, then I'll tend to recommend something that's ran by a big company, which Google runs Firebase. So Firebase seems to be a really good solution. That's what I would recommend. Firebase does a lot of things too. It doesn't just do backend databases. Cool. Eknos asks, have I evaluated Google Cloud instead of AWS? What's the reason I chose AWS compared to any other cloud? Yes, I've actually used Google Cloud quite a bit too. So AWS, I think, is just a lot easier to set up, given that there's so much documentation around it. And also, I've done it for a while now, so it's a lot easier to introduce a concept that I have a lot of content on, and AWS is the reason for that. Google Cloud is actually not that challenging to set up, but for all those reasons, I've been using AWS. But they're really both really good solutions. AWS for a lot of things, like S3, I think is the cheapest cloud storage, static file storage that you can use. Maybe not, but if it's not the cheapest, it's definitely been the most effective for us. So that's why we use it. And also, I think that's why Netflix uses it, right? So Netflix uses AWS. It's really cool. If you ever get a chance to listen to some of the Netflix dev ops engineers and how they use AWS, it's really fascinating, even if you can't follow everything that they do. Dragon asks, I learned some Python. Do I need to learn object-oriented programming to start with Django? So if you know some Python, it's going to be really easy to start with Django. I don't think Django is really that hard to pick up once you know a little bit about Python. I also don't think Django is that hard to pick up even if you don't know that much about Python. Especially if you're going step by step with tutorials like we do, then you'll start to learn a lot more about Python in there. And the best thing about any programming language or learning anything new is the questions that come up in your brain, right? Like you're like, oh, well, why does this work? And then you ask that question, and then somebody like me or one of your peers it gives this opportunity to chat about it and to give you a better solution, or a solution in general, or just asking questions helps you reframe and rethink about what's going on. And perhaps you start with something like Django and you're like, wow, I actually kind of need to know more about Python. So you do that. Plain and simple. All right. Ankit asks, have you tried Golang? What is the buzz all about? So the Go programming language, I have tried it only a little bit, and I think the buzz is that it promises to be faster for writing all sorts of technology, including machine learning applications and data science stuff. So yeah, it's just a new thing. I'm pretty sure Google released it. So whenever Google does something, or actually whenever these big companies do something, you get a lot of developers that have natural buzz for it. So like Angular is a good example of that too, or React is another good example of that, or Swift is another good example of that. All of these, like these big companies release them and they make a big deal about it. So naturally, a lot of their fans will also make a big deal about it. Go language, I think, is an example of that. Not to say that it's bad or good. It's just that's how the buzz happens, in my opinion. And then on the other side of it is Go language probably is very good, so that reinforces that buzz. Yeah. Balaz? No, that's probably not how you pronounce it. Let me know how you pronounce it, and I'll try and correct that one. Balaz R. The Z is probably pronounced differently because you have the accent over the A. Anyways, hey Justin, what is the best way to populate the database with data on initialization? First start when you ignore the migration files in Git. So if you're like talking about, it sounds maybe you're talking about this way of where you are doing a bunch of local development and you create a bunch of data for a database, and then you want to bring it into production and you want to bring that data in. Look up something called fixtures. So with Django specifically, there's this thing called fixtures where you can dump data from a specific model or an entire app and then load that data back in using it in the future. So in production, so your migration files, not sure why you would be ignoring your migration files exactly, because you probably, like when you go live, you probably want to have those migration files. You might consider squashing migrations, so like compressing them down, so then when you go into production, you only have 1 or 2 migration files instead of like 50 if you do that many migrations. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you so much for the questions, and thanks for dealing with those technical difficulties. The live stream health goes from healthy to bad video settings to healthy, then back and forth, and then we even cut out. we got to figure this out. Let me know if you have tips on making better live streams work better, or if you know a place that does, because I will do a lot more research to make sure that this thing is working. Cool. Alexander asks, I'm building a server for mobile messenger application. With the help of your lessons, I built a REST, but I have the doubt of the correctness of choosing Django. What are you saying? So you're concerned that building a mobile messenger application and using Django is a problem. Well, you're probably going to want to introduce Django channels and using that. Unfortunately, I don't have anything covering that just yet, but Django channels has a basic tutorial that you can go through that will help you bring in WebSockets and asynchronous Django code inside of Django. So Django channels does that for you. So I would check that out to make sure that your messenger application is working closer to real time, or if not exactly real time, because what WebSockets allow you to do is it allows your server to initialize communication with your client or your front end, much like what we see on this web chat right now. The server is able to send things in. So no AJAX call needs to happen on the client side. It just happens and it consumes these things. So that's something that's really cool, and Django channels allows you to make that happen. Evolution 18, is it just in my mind that can a hosting company have access to our database? Like, can they steal info from our users? Yeah, that's entirely possible. Now, would the bigger companies, say like AWS or Heroku, do they have access to those passwords? Well, they might. I mean, it depends on where you put those passwords and how you actually encrypt them. So if they have access to the passwords to your database, then yeah, they would have access to accessing it as well. Now, ethically, would they be doing these things? That's something I can't comment on. I just don't know. I would hope not. But at the end of the day, you have the option to work with something like DigitalOcean, where the hosting company wouldn't have access to your databases if you build them yourself, right? So if you have your own droplet or so, and you actually wanted to, protect it in some way or fashion, you can do that. And using a cloud server, they might have access to actually get into that server, maybe, but then they would have to have your passwords and whatnot to actually access the database from there. So that would be a way to do that. And I would imagine Heroku has a lot of security built in where their users can't actually access the database. But definitely some hosting companies can and probably do. Especially if you're on a shared host that's super, super inexpensive. I can't speak to every host that's out there that possibly does. But maybe they do, to understand their users and their users' even better. What's the best JavaScript front end to use with Django or Flask? Pick one. There's a lot of them. I'll just name a few that I know that are really good. Angular, React, Vue, those ones you could use. Those are awesome. Best is a really hard thing to define in terms of any of these front end frameworks, but those are all really good. So next question, what is the best backend language for Android app development? So you just need to build a REST API, right? So if you're only building an app, like a native mobile app, like an Android app or an iOS app, you need to have a backend API. And if you're using something that requires real time, you'll need to have a backend that supports real time. So Django channels is a good option there. Node.js is also a good option, but you can also use something like Firebase. That's also a good option. Cool. I'm going to just grab a little bit of water here. I'm so glad that the live is back. And now it's at great streaming health. I just don't understand what's going on. So Priya asks, how do I start machine learning through Python? I'm totally new to machine learning. Your videos are easy for beginners. Can you make a video regarding machine learning? Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it, Priya. So if you're trying to do deep learning, then that gets to be a lot more complicated. If you're trying to do some basic machine learning stuff, like taking a CSV file and try to make sense of it with various machine learning algorithms, you could look at something called Scikit Learn. That's SCI Kit, K-I-T, Learn. You look that up, and Scikit Learn is really, I think it's really straightforward on how to get started with some of the basics. And they have a lot of like examples and documentation. Videos for machine learning, that's something that I do intend to do in the future. It's just I have a lot of projects pending right now to get out there for you otherwise. So I do recommend checking out datacamp.com. Datacamp.com has a lot of free stuff for machine learning, including using Scikit-learn and Pandas and NumPy and all these other things too. So they're a really, really good service. So I would recommend checking them out and potentially even enrolling there, because you'll probably learn a lot if you're dedicated to it. But like I said, the documentation for Scikit-learn has a lot of examples that you can really make things happen. Eknos asks, my earlier question in terms of network, what should be a combination platform if we build a platform on Django for high traffic transaction application, i.e. for financial transactions? I still not completely following what you're saying. What combination of platform? So if you're building something with Django, like you're going to need a web server, something like Nginx, and then you're going to want it to be secure. So using SSL, you can use Let's Encrypt. And then to have high availability, you'll want to use a load balancer, which has its own challenges in making sure that your Django project is set up well on all of those, as well as using, another server for your actual database. There's a lot of stuff. Or you could use something like Heroku that handles a lot of those things for you. So you just have to worry about your code, and then you can deploy it using Git, and then boom, that's what you do. So you don't have to worry about the DevOps as much. That's part of it. So hopefully that answers your question. I would imagine it probably touches on pieces of it based on how you phrased it, at least. Joffrey says the live streaming is perfect for you in Africa. That's awesome. Great to know. Thanks for joining us all the way from Africa. Remind me again where you're from. I think you've told me before, but I'm interested in hearing. Thanks for coming out. You've been to a lot of them. I really appreciate it. So for us who only wanted to see a JavaScript front end for the sole reason of having near real-time app, does it mean that I do not need a JavaScript front end if I use Django channels? No, you probably have to use both of those things in conjunction. You can use jQuery with Django channels for the near runtime or real-time app, but using a front-end framework could potentially be streamlined. It could streamline things for you if you use it with Django channels. The Lot J asks, do client contracts need to be legalized? Do you mean in terms of like when you write a client contract, do you need to have an attorney look at it and validate it for you? I think at least for the initial one, that might be a good idea. And you might be able to find inexpensive legal advice on Upwork.com. And what I would do if I was you, I would hire one, have them write the contract for you, and then hire another one and have them review that contract and make sure that it's okay. The one that reviews it, maybe you pay them a little bit more, maybe they readjust it. But that way you have this like sort of double blind way of hiring an attorney. That's of course if you don't know one, right? If you don't know one that you trust, that would be a way to do it that's not super expensive. So you have two people looking at it to make sure that it's legit. But the other side of it is when you're working with clients, they're people, right? If you don't trust them, then why are you going to do work with them? Even if they're going to pay you, and even if they're going to pay you a lot of money, if you don't trust them or that they're going to pay you, why? Why even do it? Why even get an attorney involved in the first place? So the other side is, thinking about this idea of the handshake deal is like, if you can do a handshake deal and not need an attorney whatsoever, find those kinds of clients first. So that's one thing. Now, of course, if you want legit contracts, get an attorney involved. And, when you think about attorneys, you're going to probably get what you pay for. But I think like client contracts, you might even be able to find one on Google that's free and will hold up in most cases. And I mean, honestly, so if you're in the United States, if you work with a client that ends up like somehow screwing you over and not paying for something, You can also reference emails and conversations and agreements and all these things that will build up your case against them. Again, I'm not an attorney, but my mom is, so I have some ideas for these things. But you can build up a case against them because you have this like sort of history with them if they're taking advantage of you as a freelancer or as a contractor. So definitely you want to keep those things in mind. But again, if you can't do a handshake deal with them, why would you even want to work with them? Anke asks, what are my views on the Tornado framework? I don't really use it, so I don't have a lot of views on it. I think it's like an async IO framework. If that's the case, then Django Channels kind of competes with that directly. So I believe it's for asynchronous web application development with Python. So yeah, I don't have a lot of views on it. I've played around with it a little bit, but not enough to really comment on it. But I think it has some solid support, but it's still on the smaller side. And doing asynchronous code, I believe that's what it's for. Django Channels would circumvent that. It would actually handle it. Tark asks, "Hey, are you gonna update your article about Django 2.0? Is it out of date? The article on joincfe.com/blog with Django 2.0, is it out of date? I have updated it a few times. Comment on that actual article with issues that you might have. That way we can improve it there and all of us can see the issue that might be coming up. Thanks for the question, though. Much appreciated. Harvarshan, maybe? Can I do a tutorial on model-less Django REST API? What are you trying to do here? Why do you not want to have a model specifically? You can absolutely use the generic API view that they have built in to create your APIs as needed. Next one, Ankit asks, Django Q or Celery? I'm actually not familiar with Django Q if we're talking about a different third-party package than the Q lookups. It's probably different, I would imagine. Celery is awesome. It's really cool. But if you move into using Django Channels, you're probably not going to use Celery anymore because Django Channels handles a lot of things that Celery does. With the exception of an actual scheduler, but there's ways around that as well. Cool. Let me just have a little bit of coffee here while you guys ask some more questions. Oh, I'm so glad it started working. And of course, it's like all green live stream help. So what I plan on doing, if the videos were separated for some reason, what I'm going to do is actually download them both and put them into one video and then re-upload that as the live stream. That's probably what I'm going to do. Hopefully it didn't happen that way. Hopefully they actually stitched together because it was like a stop and then a restart. I have no idea why that happened. But we're back online now, so we can answer questions for you guys as we go forward, which is awesome. Alexander asks, my mobile messenger sends and receives messages in real time. I use a socket and a message broker, RabbitMQ, and Celery. Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. So if you added Django Channels, I would imagine you probably wouldn't necessarily need to use Celery anymore. You would still need a message broker like RabbitMQ or Redis, but you wouldn't necessarily need to use Celery. I'm curious as to what you're using for your socket layer or your WebSockets. Alexander asks, or also says that it would be cool to see on the channel or on the canal of the channel. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Lessons with them and Django Channels. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm working on Django Channels right now. But they recently released a new version, so I haven't been able to spend enough time with it. Like I had a bunch of things prepped and ready to go for a Django Channels series, and then I heard about the new version coming out, so I kind of put that on the back burner until they fix some of the bugs on the new version. Cool. Quat asks, not again, or says not again. Are you referring to the stream? Is it failing again? Hopefully not. Evolution 18, if possible, can you make a tutorial on infinite scrolling and Twitter loading its style of new posts with Angular and Firebase, just in case after your serious tuts? So you want something that, like, when you scroll to the bottom, it loads some new stuff. That's actually fairly straightforward to do, and we cover pretty much everything there, with the exception of the actual scroll part. But you can click a button and it scrolls more, or it loads more things for you. We cover that on our Tweet Me project on joincv.com/projects. That's like a Twitter sort of project itself. Like, it's like Twitter, and we build some things in there. That the Lot J says yes. Awesome. So the next one is Barcote says, is Node.js a framework of JavaScript? It's a backend framework from JavaScript. Yes. Valok says, oh, how'd you do that? How'd you color my name in? That's cool. When you refer to coding entrepreneurs, you say we. How do you find your partners? Some of it is through this. Some of it is through my projects themselves, like, so the actual courses. And other it is just like meeting people and being introduced to people from friends of friends. And then also, sometimes I need freelancers and I work with them, I go on Upwork.com. That's actually a really good service for me, in sense of every once in a while I need someone to just do something real quick for me, whether it's some code related things or graphics or something other. That's what I end up using. I also like doing a lot of these things, so I actually end up doing a lot more work than I think a lot of developers would. I think part of the reason for that is, yes, I like doing it, but also it helps me work in a different mode of my brain, which is something I find also interesting. Balaz, you're from Hungary. Hey, Balaz, welcome back. I'm glad you're still here. Have you tried Dockerizing a Django project? What do you think about it if 5 or 6 developers are working on it at the same time? So yeah, using Docker is great with Django. It is more challenging than just the basic Django setup and using Git. But I would say that they definitely have a guide to show you how to Dockerize a Django project. So 5 or 6 devs working on it at the same time. What I would do is have 1 or 2 people responsible for deployment, and then using Git while you guys are all working on it at the same time. And then if you have to pass around that Docker container with that Django project, you can, but have development versions of that so those different devs can work on them. And then using Git to actually control that. Now, I don't know if that's the best method of using Docker with Django, because I don't use it very much, but I have. So I personally would say use Git, because it's a great version control system. It's proven very valuable for a lot of people using it. So if you use Git and then have one person in control of the Dockerizing of it, then problems will happen a lot less. Yeah. Abdel asks, what technologies do you use on codingforentrepreneurs.com? So definitely Django, right? Obviously. I use Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is that front-end design library. It used to be called a front-end framework. It's not a framework. It's a front-end design library is now what it's referred to as, or maybe just a front-end library. So those 2 things for sure. Use AWS S3. I use Heroku. I use jQuery. I have some Angular stuff on there. I use Wistia for video streaming. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else is there. SendGrid for sending emails. MailChimp for email marketing. What else? Name.com for buying domain names. I'm trying to think what else I'm missing. There's probably something else. But that's the technology that we use. Obviously, like, using jQuery means that I use stuff like Ajax. And then obviously using Bootstrap means I use HTML and CSS. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Cool. Gaza Imp, hi. Is it sufficient enough to just specialize in Django and other backend technologies, or is it necessary to have at least one front-end framework under your belt? Thanks in advance. Gaza, so this is a good question. Like, the question really is, how do you stand out? That's what I think. Right? Now, if you are one of the best Django backend developers, you will get work, without a doubt. Now, knowing some of the front ends will probably be expected of you, at least to some degree. At least having some of the basics down. Maybe not. Maybe it's not expected of you because you can quite literally say, hey, look, I don't know front end frameworks that well. I know a little bit about how they work with Django. But I know everything there is to know about Django and how to build an API to work with those front end frameworks of what you need. Just tell your front end developer what they need from me, and I'll make that happen. And it will be faster, better tested than anybody else. If that's your mindset, then yeah, you can probably get really, really good at Django and do that specifically. So the other side of it is like if you want to try and be a jack of all trades, meaning you have full stack web development, you're probably not going to be great at any one of those in particular, but you'll be able to handle a bigger project, or at least handle something that might seem a lot better than just specializing in one area. Like what I can do. I can actually handle all of these different things, but am I the best Django developer? No, there's definitely ones that are way better than me. Am I the best Angular developer? Same answer, right? And you can say that about all the other things that I know. But what it allows me to do is if a client were to come to me, like if I was going to do freelancing, and a client were to come to me and say, hey, this is what I'm building. What do I need? What do I need to do? I think I'd be able to give them really, really good advice on how to make those things happen because I have a lot of experience with the full stack. That being said, if I was like, well, we really, really need a really good Django developer, I would look for one single really, really good Django developer and not worry too much about their expertise in the front end. Contrast that with, I want a really, really good user interface developer. I would look for a really, really good user interface developer and make sure that they know how to integrate with a backend with some sort of REST API, but not worry about their ability to do that. Right? It just totally makes sense that you wouldn't actually have to know the full gambit, but you just want to be really, really good at what you know and not pretend like you know things that you don't. I think that's one of the traps that a lot of developers I've seen, or a lot of freelancers that I've seen get into. They'll say, yes, I know that. Yes, I know that. Which in reality, they know a little bit of it and they have to research a lot of it. So I couldn't sit you down in front of a computer, or sit this person down in front of a computer and have them build everything without doing lookups or very many lookups, or reading documentation, or watching videos, or going to Stack Overflow over and over again. I think that's a little bit of a challenge if they can't do that. So if I was you, I think you could do really well with just being, like if you were going to freelance and go on Upwork, I think you could do really, really well with just being a Django developer. Like that's all that you do. Because me as me hiring a freelancer, it would be really awesome to see somebody being that honest about who they are. Like if you look on Upwork right now and search Django, you'll see people that say they know Django, PHP, WordPress, Node.js, JavaScript, pure JavaScript, jQuery, blah, blah, blah. They have this super long list and they do it to seem like they're impressive. I don't think it's impressive. I think it's showing that they're not disciplined to really master one thing. And that's where you can really stand out in specializing in one area and just dominating that area. And when you want to dominate it even more, you can write a blog. If you're not that comfortable on video or audio, you can write a blog and talk about all of your specialization in that one single area and just really be able to just dominate that one niche. And I think Django has the potential to do that. That's what I would do if I was freelancing in Django. I would do that specifically. I would cut off all other options. And I would say that I know how to integrate with these JavaScript front ends. Obviously, you need to have that part, but I don't specialize in them. And just be completely honest about that because, again, it's really easy when there's money on the line, it's really easy to say, oh, yes, I can do that. Oh, yes, I can do that. And yes, I can do that. I mean, sometimes that's necessary for personal growth. Like you're learning Django and you get a client that says, hey, I want to hire you in Django, but you're not really ready for their project. Sometimes that's really good for growth because then you take the responsibility and you're like, I'm going to make this thing happen. So you learn, you do everything possible while not charging them all the time, right? Because if you're learning something, you're not necessarily charging your client for everything that you're doing, but instead you're spending the time to make sure that their project happens and happens well. Rant over. Thanks for the question. I really appreciate it. I do like that question. Crescent from Kenya. Hey, what's going on? You're a big fan and you learned Django from my Try Django series. Thanks so much. I'm happy to hear that. About JS framework, which is the best for a starter, Ember, React, or Angular? I would use Angular or React. One of those two. I talk about and teach a lot about Angular, but Angular, React, those are the ones I would use. Ember is still a very valuable one, but I don't think they're nearly as popular as React or Angular, so you won't be able to get as much help. That being said, if you try all three of them and you like Ember the best, do it. Do the one that you like, and work really hard to get good at it. Emmanuel asks, or Emmanuel. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, and that's true for everybody. Obviously, I'm trying to pronounce your name so I can get to know you guys. What are my views on the concept of the slowness of Python, specifically Django? Should it be a concern for a startup? How do you make it faster? I actually just talked about this. I'm not sure if the live stream cut out or not. Django runs Instagram and Pinterest. I mean, it definitely used to. I'm not sure if it does still, but it definitely did when there was millions of users. So it's not slow enough to make a difference, right? It's not fast enough to make a difference either. Like those two things, those big web applications use it. So it's not a concern for a startup at all. To make it faster, you can use things like WebSockets. So using Django channels allows it to be asynchronous as well. I don't think that you have to worry about the speed as a startup. When you have to worry about the speed, that's when you'll have enough traction to be able to better analyze how quick you need to change things. The speed you should be worried about is getting your project out there. Python and Django do that better than anyone else, in my opinion. That's what I think that you should be doing. Cool. So one last point on that, Instagram does use Node.js for push notifications. So you might use other technology like Node.js or something like Firebase to actually do push notifications for you to supplement what you're doing in Django. Let's see. Manish, hey, you sent me an email a few hours ago about geolocation in Django. Thanks for the email. Looks like we have a follow-up question to that, which I'll get to. Cameron, I'll get right back to your question. How do I use Elasticsearch with Django? I've heard a lot about it. Haystack, but it doesn't integrate with other models other than model.model. Integrate with other models other than models.model. What are you doing that's not models.model? I'm not sure why you wouldn't be using models.model or even an abstract of models.model. So I don't know how to answer that. Elasticsearch there's a lot of resources online to integrate Django with Elasticsearch. So just a quick Google search will show you how to do that. So I would do it with a very, very, very basic project first and then move over. Cameron, thanks for the question. I love your tutorials. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad they've been helpful. Do you know a good rich text editor for Django? I really like using Sublime Text. There are Django packages that you can install there. A really popular one otherwise that's actually kind of expensive is called PyCharm or PyCharm. That one I've heard also very, very good things. I never got it to work in my workflow, but other people have. That's why I've been sticking with Sublime Text for as long as I have. And the nice thing about Sublime Text is it's free and it will stay free, but it just kind of nags you eventually. Let's see. Next question. Harshvardhan. Django versus Java EE, Spring Framework. Which one is offering a high pay scale job? I don't know. You probably have to be good. If you're a really good Django developer, you probably get a very high paying job. If you're a very poor Java developer, you probably won't get a high paying job, and vice versa. If you're a great developer, you will probably get a high paying job. The tactical advice on look that up on job boards, I I don't have an answer for you there. Sorry. Let's see. Next one, Local Boy VJ. Hi, Justin. How do you connect Django with an Nginx server? There's definitely guides somewhere out there to do it. I think I've even ran through it myself on one of my projects. It's pretty straightforward, is what I mean. So you kind of have to know how to write the Nginx configuration file, but overall it's pretty straightforward. So look up a guide on there. But thanks for the question, Local Boy VJ. Sorry, that probably doesn't give you the answer you're looking for, but I promise you there's a guide somewhere to show you how to do it. So next one. Okay, guys, we're going to do maybe like 10 more minutes of questions, just so you know. So I'm close to the bottom. So if I get to the bottom, then we'll be done. But if I don't, then we will go for 10 more minutes. All right. So Abdel asks, do you recommend to use AWS with EC2 to launch a Django project? Yeah, I mean, if you know how to set up a server, then yeah, absolutely. It's a great service. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of projects that use EC2 with Django. If you know how to set up a server, you can launch on pretty much any server, any cloud service in general. But if you don't know how to do that, AWS's Elastic Beanstalk is a really good alternative to something like Heroku. I don't think it's as good as Heroku, but it's really close. Yeah. Next one, is Django a good choice for an IoT platform? Yeah, I think so. I actually did one specifically for Django and Raspberry Pi on my home-based project that's on joincfe.com/projects. Django is a little bit on the bigger side though, so if you need a smaller framework, take a look at Flask, and you can use that to control your Python code in an IoT platform. You just need to set up a Nginx server or an Apache server on that actual item to make sure that it works on your local area network at least. Ode to Awesomeness. Hey bro, what's up? Not much, just doing some live streaming, you know. Thanks for saying hi. Tanzim says, hello, bro. Can you tell me who set up the initial image, or how to set up the initial image value in image field or file field? What do you mean? You want to have it preset on all things? Like you want to add a default? Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You can set an initial value in the forms. Just look up how to set up, like in Django, how to set an initial value with a Django form, and then you would just put the image there. And there's probably even a guide on how to do it with an image specifically. I would imagine that's a Stack Overflow post somewhere. Cool. Joe Vud, hey, I took your advice and started learning from your very first video series. Try Django 1.6.1. Thank you for such a detail answering our questions. You're welcome. I'm glad that you are doing Django and you're making things happen. Django 1.6.1, like I said before, you will learn a lot because the concepts are still there. The quality of my recording back then, let me put it a different way. My newer versions of Try Django, I believe, are a higher quality version than my older ones, although you'll still learn a lot from them. So you might consider using Try Django 1.11. The other added benefit is Django 1.11 will be supported, I think, until 2020, something like that. Maybe even longer than that. So just keep that as a question. Abdel, thank you for your content. It is awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Abdel, rock on right back to you. Abdallah asked, on AWS computing, what do you prefer, EC2 or Lambda? Depends on what you're trying to do. Excuse me. That was unexpected. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? So Lambda is really good for processing things really quickly. EC2 is really good if you want to build full projects, much like Django, right? So you wouldn't use Django with Lambda, in other words. Evolution 18, okay, got it, let me have a look, but your tuts are really appreciated among all other paid courses. May God bless you. And within our country limits, these kind of tuts really mean a lot to us. I'll let you know that we have more than 50 students are benefiting by your courses. And what about Hit Startup? Hopefully, just curious about the real pain in the startup path. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So Hit Startup, the actual startup I was building in that series, and first of all, thank you so much for the nice words. I really, really do appreciate it. Hearing these things just gives me so much energy. I'm shocked. Like, I've heard that before from other people that create stuff, that do live events. How much energy you get from people just acknowledging you. It's just awesome. So thank you for all that. I really, really do appreciate it. Hit Startup was this series that I started doing for a startup that I started working on. This startup just kind of went defunct. It was not something I was very interested in after doing some of the things for Hit Startup. I thought it was like interesting and fun for a little while, but I didn't get the traction that I wanted. So the Hit Startup series that was going to document that whole process just kind of took a back burner and then just sort of faded away. And then I just came back to Coding for Entrepreneurs and doing a lot more here. That's kind of where it's at. So now what I'm trying to do is do these live events where happy to talk about entrepreneurship and the journey. So you can ask questions here and we make it more about these live things. And then if I get a bunch of questions about my business and entrepreneurship with Coding for Entrepreneurs, then maybe also doing more of a series there. Because the real pain in startup is traction. That's one of the biggest things, right? So for example, if I was doing a live stream right now and 0 people were here, it would be hard to continue doing a live stream. Probably. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I just rant for a while and just talk, and then eventually people start watching. But if nobody was here, like, I could imagine that you would get this feeling of like, doesn't seem like anyone cares about this, so maybe I should do something different. That happens with all sorts of things in a startup. And so what you want to do is build a traction and excitement as soon as possible. And if you get that, great, then you can move on to the next thing. And not to say that the Hit Startup didn't have any traction, it just didn't have the traction that I was super excited about. Further, I wasn't as excited about the business itself. I became less and less interested and noticed that there was a lot of really good alternatives for what I was talking about. Does that mean that I'm never going to do something like Hit Startup again? No, that doesn't mean that at all. It just means that I've kind of put it on a back burner to focus a lot more here on Coding for Entrepreneurs and doing stuff like this with you guys. Thanks so much for the question. Happy to answer more if you have them. Thank you. Related to entrepreneurship, of course. So Manish asks, Django Cassandra Engine is a database backend that will provide their own set of model classes. Django Haystack is a very popular library for integrating server backends like Solar and Elasticsearch. Thank you, Manish. But Haystack doesn't work with anything other than base Django models. What do I do? You might have to reverse engineer the code and adapt, like pull Django Haystack, fork it or whatever, make your own version to connect with the Django Cassandra engine. I haven't used Django Cassandra engine. So does that mean that with Django Cassandra, can you actually use multiple backends, like multiple databases with Django Cassandra in one Django project? I'm really curious to hear about that because that was a question that came up before. So then I can recommend it. Maybe I should look that up anyway, but it would be cool if you knew that answer right off the top of your head. So when they use their own model classes, I wonder if they are extended models of the built-in model. They're the base Django model. If they're not, I wonder what they are and what their reasoning for it. Thanks so much. Thanks for your answer. Also, wait for your guide on how to connect properly Django with Nginx server. Cool. I think there's a guide out there for you. Look up DigitalOcean. I would imagine that they have one for Nginx. So setting up an Ubuntu server with Django on DigitalOcean, I think they have that. Cool. So the very last question I'm going to answer, I promise you, the very last question is Rajan's question, which is currently the bottom question. It's currently the last question. So local boy VJ, thanks for your answer. And sorry, I just read that one. Mahmudul says at first, thanks for your great tutorials. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. How to handle race condition in Django. I've watched your video with my question, how to handle the traffic those projects can handle race condition. I'm not sure what you mean by that. How much traffic those projects can handle per second. Part of it is your server setup, and part of it is how you write your code. So make sure you have super clean awesome code. Those are the things that I would worry about. XYZ, hey there on your website. There's the blue register header on the top. Is rather intrusive, in my opinion. Any plans on altering it in the future? Is there an option to sort out your projects by publish date? Oh, so you're talking about the welcome mat, the big thing that says like, hey, we launch your projects, and you put your email in there. Yeah, to get rid of it, you just log in. So once you log in, that goes away. You won't see it again. It's intrusive on purpose, right? I want you guys to join me. I want you to join me on there. And I want to do it in a very simple way, which is just grabbing your email and getting started right away. So I realize it's rather intrusive, and you're probably right. But again, it's about getting you guys into the system as quickly as possible. It's a marketing thing versus having you sort of browse and all that. And yeah, I mean, to get rid of it, it's just a matter of registering and signing up. And when you do see that, you need to, just showing you that you need to register. That's it. Or log in. All right. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. I do appreciate the feedback, even if you don't necessarily like those sorts of things. They're done to help build like momentum into the system very, very simply. There's a lot of really effective uses of these welcome mats in other websites. So if you're interested in how they work, definitely let me know, because it is an interesting a way to do marketing. For example, signups for me have gone up exponentially from introducing that welcome mat. Exponentially. So yeah, it's something that's going to stay because of that. Because if you don't have a way to just start, think about Facebook. If you go to Facebook on almost any page, if you're not authenticated, they're going to force you to authenticate or sign up. And what I'm doing is a subtle way, not so much like that, but a way that allows that to happen more often. And it really does. It's super effective. That's why it hasn't gone away, and that's why it's not going to go away anytime soon. Yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience, but I really just hope that you join us. That's it. Okay, so so if you guys want to see this on Slack, do you want me to make a Slack channel? Let me know in the comments. Say yes or no on Slack. Would really appreciate it if that's something that you guys would end up wanting and you would want to use on a regular basis. Because if you don't want to use it on a regular basis, then I probably won't end up doing it. You set an initial image from the database as a form value. User can change the image, but I cannot save the file. So I'm not sure why you want to do that. You want to have an initial image. You can have a placeholder image showing up, and when they go on their form, they just change whatever that placeholder is. If that's what you're trying to do, then you just have some sort of condition or a method in the model saying get image, and then you just load a static image in there if there is no image uploaded to that. NeoJ asked, what stack do you use? I have Postgres SQL, Django, obviously that uses Python. And then jQuery for the front end for a lot of things. For most things is jQuery still, and Bootstrap. Yeah. Okay. Rajan, this is the last one that we're going to be asking. You guys asked a ton of questions since I mentioned that. These questions I won't be able to get to, so make sure that you put them in the comments of this video once it's posted on my channel. That way I for sure get to them, because sometimes the live chat ones I just don't get to in the next live stream. And I do answer these questions, those like late questions, I answer them in the next live stream, which will be tomorrow, and it'll be at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which I'll schedule that event right after this. Last question from Rajan is, why don't you start up India? Many people coming from other countries here, and they are booming. Why don't I start a business in India? Is that what you mean? Like, why don't I create a business in India specifically for India because they are booming? Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. I know I have a fairly good-sized audience in India. I'm not sure the market, though. That's the thing. It's like I don't actually know what you guys may need. A big part of that is because I'm not Indian myself, so I can't see the need to fill things or the problems that you may have as well as you could. That's why you guys should be starting those businesses. I do see the one need I do see is the one that I have had, that's learning how to code, and that's why I have the business I have, and I have a lot of customers from India and throughout the world that use codingforentrepreneurs.com, but then I also just have a lot of just students in general from India too learning. So in a way, I have a business there. But if you're saying like an actual startup that solves a problem in India, I'm not sure what that problem might be, other than maybe having a software development team and building that up and using you guys in India that are very talented and hungry to make that stuff happen. All right, so I will answer a few more questions because of the issues with the live stream at the beginning. So I'm going to do these rapid fire though. Thank you guys for all the questions. I will do my best to just knock these off real quick. So looking at Django source code and knowing how to so is looking at Django source code useful? Absolutely. Looking at anyone's code is 100% useful because you can try and figure out what's going on. What is a Django CMS? CMS stands for Content Management System. What that means is just making it easier to run your blog, essentially, right? So WordPress is a CMS, if you're familiar with that. There are Django third-party packages that do that. My opinion is build it yourself, because then you'll learn a lot more and you'll have something very, very useful for your system. You're thinking about reverse engineering, but it seems like a lot of pain. Yes, it's a lot of pain. But it can be something that will grow a lot. A lot. Oh, you asked a question about Cassandra. I joined CFE and you recommended me DCE. I'm not sure what DCE is. I don't remember what that is. Sorry. Saad, what do you think about the implementation of Elasticsearch with Django and Django default filtering? Do you have any Elasticsearch? I heard nothing but good things about it. I don't use it a whole lot myself, but I heard that it can be a lot more effective than just doing your Django query set lookups because of how it works itself. Cool. Thanks for the question. Hey, Mitchell. Mitchell is my last name. Justin is my first name. Big follower of your videos. Thanks so much for watching. Do appreciate it. You learned Django and its concepts from my videos. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Next one. Thanks for your answers. Thank you for your questions. I appreciate it. PHP or Python? Python all the way. Love Python. What's your opinion on a serverless Django Zappa framework? Haven't used it. Serverless frameworks are very interesting for sure. Absolutely for sure. Slack, yes. Yes for Slack. Cool. That's 2. I really need to know from more of you guys just, about if you want Slack. So let me know in the comments. I'll probably just end up doing it. But yeah. Elo like the social network, or are you just saying hello? If you're saying hello, Elo, the social network is over. Django concepts mentioned most in Python Django developer interviews. There's a lot, and so I don't have an answer there. I think somebody else has come up with a pretty good video for that. Just check that out on Google. Oh, haha, DCE is Django Cassandra engine. Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for the answers. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the questions. I appreciate it, guys. Angular React. I like Angular. Last question. You guys love sneaking these in at the end, don't you? Hi, would you personally recommend for building an HTML and CSS-based front end for a Python-based music player app? Ooh, I don't know. Python-based music player app. If it's just HTML and CSS and you already have the JavaScript music player stuff done, then Bootstrap. Bootstrap's great. You don't need a whole full-on front end. Anyways, thanks so much for the questions, guys. I really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun doing this. I always do. Even with some of these really challenging ones that I just don't know the answer to. But I do very much appreciate you guys showing up and showing up consistently. Some of you have been to every single one, and that is phenomenal. It's awesome. I do appreciate that. Hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to do that event right now. Thanks again, guys. Keep it easy.